Jensen. This morning we are going to make banana bread and some sourdough starter pancakes. So I have my oven at 350 preheating. So I'm going to start with my banana bread. So I've got my mixer here and I'm going to make a double batch because I have a lot of bananas to use. So we're going to start by adding 9 bananas. You're supposed to use 8, but I have a couple smaller ones. So I'm going to put them in my mixer here. I like to give my bananas a good squish before I put them in, and that just helps with the mashing up process. And feel it in. So I'm using, these are 9 bananas, but my recipe really calls for 8-bit large bananas, but I have a couple small ones. For some reason, we have a lot of bananas. You know, my kids, sometimes they just go from like eating a bunch of one thing and then the next week they barely touch it. And we went from eating like 3 bananas a day to like nobody wanted a banana. So we make banana bread. Just have a few more to add in here. A lot of times though, when my bananas get ripe and I'm not ready to do it, I can just pop them in the fridge or the freezer, and that will also help me delay the like over ripening process. And give it a good smush. But my kids love a nice delicious banana bread. This is just a really simple recipe. You can add spices and stuff to it, but this is just a basic one that my kids and family love. So I have 9 bananas in here, or about 8 large ones. And I'm gonna just push my pad up and I'm gonna give it a quick little mash real quick. There we go. And I'm gonna blend them until it's kind of like a juicy pulp. You wanna make sure your bananas are well mashed, otherwise you'll get really big chunks in your muffin. And I don't mind that, but my kids don't like huge banana chunks. They like it to be more consistent and smooth throughout their banana bread or muffin. So give it a quick roll. So now you can see we've got kind of like a slimy goop, and then they will get more mashed up when I add the sugar in. So I'm gonna start by adding in 1 cup of white sugar. And then I'm gonna add in 1 cup of brown sugar. You could use all white sugar for this recipe, but I feel like the brown sugar adds a nice richness to the banana bread. So I'm gonna add in 1 cup, and I'm gonna try to pack it down some while I add it in there. So 1 cup of brown sugar. If you didn't know the difference between brown sugar and regular sugar, brown sugar is just white sugar with molasses added to it. That's what gives it its rich brown color. And now I'm going to mix these up real nice until the sugar has completely blended with the bananas. And the sugar will start to dissolve in the banana juices, which is where you get the liquid part of this batter. So you can see, if you look in here, it's starting to blend nicely. It's starting to look more like a banana soup, which is just what we want. Now, I'm going to add 4 eggs. But today we are gonna have a little slightly different. So I went to the store twice and I went to Costco, and they have been sold out of eggs here in Nashville because whenever we have a winter storm, everyone buys up all the eggs and milk and butter. So all they had were some quail eggs. So about 3 quail eggs will equal 1 egg. So I'm gonna be using that, and I do have 1 egg left from this. I normally buy 5 dozen eggs at a time, and that we go through that in about a week and a half here. We feed a small little army. So we're gonna have our little quail eggs. So I'm gonna add my first egg over here, crack it in. If you are just like starting to crack eggs and you're not used to it, you can crack it in a little bowl and pour it in. I'm gonna do that with my quail eggs because, truth be told, I have never really used quail eggs before or cracked them. So I don't know how well they're gonna crack. So I'm gonna crack them in here, but they're small. My brother-in-law, he's an egg farmer, and I asked him and he said, you can pretty much use it. It's gonna be about the exact same. It looks so cute. It's just a tiny egg. So I'm gonna I need 4 regular sized eggs. So I have 1 regular egg in there. So then I'm gonna need about 9 of these teeny tiny quail eggs. I have to say, these are absolutely adorable. They're like, if you were like making, they don't crack as easy, I'll tell you that though. But I'm getting them right in here.
A good size for Chef Teddy.
I know, these are perfect, would be for my like toddlers. I might have to get these to make, I got a little eggshell in there so I can just use my finger to prop these out before I mix them in. That's why I'm doing them in a bowl. But these are definitely perfect for if I were to do them for my toddlers. Bruni, Loki, no barks. I got my dogs over there. The kids are getting on the bus, so of course they love to bark at everything. And now my last little quail egg. Okay, these are so adorable, I'm not gonna lie. So I'm gonna put these in here with my 1 big egg. And they're gonna do just what I need them to do, which is kind of react with the baking soda and baking powder.
You gotta comment about the quail eggs, so you might want to just re-explain why.
Okay, yes. So we had a snowstorm here like a week and a half ago, and in the South, whenever we have a snowstorm, it sells out of all the eggs, the milk, and butter. So I've gone to the store 3 times in the last week and a half, and they have been sold out of eggs. Costco is sold out mainly because they had a recall. And then Publix, where I go to, has been sold out. Nothing. The only thing that was on the shelves were quail eggs. They didn't even have like liquid egg substitute. So I talked to my brother-in-law, who's an egg farmer, and he said you can use about 3 per egg and it will be just fine. So we're using some quail eggs today because I had so many bananas I needed to get rid of, and got to make banana bread. So I'm going to mix these eggs in, and I'm going to mix them until all the yolks have thoroughly mixed into the batter, and it'll be about like 30 seconds or so on here. Get these dumped out while they're mixing. Perfect. I'm hoping when I come back from my trip this weekend that eggs will be back in stock, because we're a large family. I have 5 kids, and then there's us, and I cook for my parents. So that's like 9 people we feed daily. So we go through a lot of eggs in a week, just because we love scrambled eggs. I do a lot of baking. So I hope they're back in stock. So I have my eggs in here, and now I'm going to add my baking soda, baking powder, and salt. So these 2 ingredients here, these are going to react with my eggs, which is what's going to make my banana bread rise. So this is your chemistry lesson of the day. And the only difference between baking soda and baking powder is baking soda mixed with cornstarch. So cornstarch is a slightly thickening agent, so it gives you a little less of the reactive things and it thickens your stuff a little. So I'm using a good mixture of these both. So I'm going to use since this is a double recipe of baking thing, I'm going to use just under a tablespoon of baking soda. And this is one of the ingredients that you have to be more precise on. Seasonings, not so much, but reactive agents, yes, because if you put too much in, your thing's gonna bubble up, and then it'll also have not as pleasant of a flavor. And then I'm going to do 1 tablespoon of baking powder. And just try to tamp it off so it's about even. And these are going to react with my eggs and the egg yolk and my batter to give the banana bread a nice rise to it. And then I'm going to add in 2 teaspoons of salt. Salt is a really important ingredient when baking. It actually brings out your flavor. Salt is a flavor enhancer. So when you don't add salt in it, you're really not saving yourself that much sodium, but you're costing a lot of flavor. So I put in 2 teaspoons of salt, and granted this is double a recipe of banana bread. And I'm gonna give this a quick mix. And I wanna make sure the baking soda and the baking powder gets spread throughout my ingredients, because I like to mix it into my wet ingredients instead of having to take the time to sift it in the flour. I feel like some baking things you need to sift it in the flour, but for most you don't have to. If you're making macaroons, yes, you need to sift, or certain things, but this, if you just mix it in the wet ingredients and then add it, you don't have to go through the process of sifting your baking soda and baking powder. And then I'm gonna add in, I have a cup of melted butter. This is what my fat is for it. You could use oil if you want. I find melted butter gives it a nice dense texture to it, which I really like. So it has more of like a banana pound cake feel to it. So I have a cup of melted butter, which is 2 sticks of butter. And now we're gonna add the flour. And my flour is always my last ingredient that I like to add, because once you add it in, it's really hard to add any other ingredient. And I'm going to add just a little over 4 cups of flour. So it's about 4 1/4 cups of flour. So 1, 2, 3, 4, and just a pinch extra. And then I'm gonna start my mixer on slow to mix it up so it doesn't all poop out. And I'm just going to mix until my flour is incorporated into my banana bread.
You've got 2 questions. First is, what are you making, and can you use ghee instead of butter?
Yes, so I'm making banana bread, and banana bread, so we're thinking, and ghee is actually just clarified butter. So it's essentially butter that has all the milk solids taken off. You can use ghee, you could use oil, olive oil, avocado oil. You could use any type of like fattener in it, like a lipid, any oil based in there. So ghee would be perfect. That just has, it's just butter that's been clarified, which is really nice too. It won't be as salt. It takes away the saltiness texture of it. So yeah, ghee would work perfectly. And then again, I'm making just a basic banana bread. So I have all of it mixed up. I'm gonna drop my paddle down. And this is double my recipe because I had a lot of bananas. And I have a little extra flour, but I'm just gonna use a spoon at the end and scoop that around. Since it is a bit like a quick bread, I don't wanna over mix it because I don't want my eggs to get whipped, because that will give you a completely different texture. So I'm just gonna finish up with a silicone spatula here, and I'm just gonna give it a good stir all the way around, really scraping the bottom of my mixing bowl, because sometimes you get some flour or whatnot that just didn't get mixed in there. Perfect, so now I have my banana bread batter. Give it a little taste. Perfect. And now I'm going to make my banana bread. I'm gonna make some muffins, and then I'm gonna make it in a bun cake thing. I find making it in a bun cake is really nice because this one has it, like it has individual cuts in it, so it's really easy to serve up, especially for my kids who are serving themselves up. So I'm gonna put in here, I've got my my muffin liners or cupcake liners. These are foil, but you can also use the parchment paper ones. And I not wanted to come apart for me. And then what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna give this a good spray of Pam baking spray, which is just like traditional Pam with a little bit of flour mixed in, which helps it come out nicely. If you are gonna use a loaf pan and you don't have a liner in it, you definitely wanna make sure it's either well greased or sprayed down with some sort of cooking spray. Because otherwise, when you try to get it out, it won't come out. It will stick to the edges. So I just got some Pam baking spray, which is just has flour mixed into it. And I'm just gonna really give it a good spray, making sure I get all these nooks and crannies, just like this. And now, what I'm going to do is I'm gonna get a spoon. It'll be easier to fill up than that. And I'm just going to take a scoop at first and fill up. So this is just a large kitchen, like a large utensil spoon. And I'm just gonna take a nice big scoop like that and fill it up in here. Unlike cupcakes, these are a little bit more denser, so it's not gonna have quite as much of a rise as a traditional like cake. So I like to fill them up close to the top so they have a nice little moist dome at the top. And I'll put these, and then I'm gonna fill up with the rest of my batter. I'm gonna fill it up in my big loaf pan, or my bundt pan, fancy bundt pan, I guess. I think it's like a Nordic ware bundt pan, but it works really, really well. It's a bit thicker than just the thinner aluminum ones. And then here is just a regular muffin pan. I think I got it from Target, or it could be Willings and Sonoma. It might be the Gold Touch ones from them, but I'm not 100% sure. So I have all of these. I just want to make sure they're about evenly filled so that they all bake at about the same time. Because if you have one that's filled less or more than the other, it might be not as done or overdone. And I'm going to pop these muffins in the oven real quick, and then we'll fill up our bundt pan, and I'll add that next. So I'm gonna come put these, I have my oven heating at 350, so it's already preheated. That's really key. You always wanna put your baked goods in a preheated oven, unless your recipe specifies otherwise. So I'm gonna just put this right over here because I'm gonna have my bundt on that one. And now I'm gonna fill up my bundt pan with the rest of this, and then we're gonna work on our pancakes, our sourdough starter pancakes, which my little ones who are still sleeping will have for breakfast. Also, this dough's really thick, or batter's thick. That's because I used butter in it. If you were to use an oil, it would be just a little bit thinner. And that's one of the reasons why I like using butter, because it does kind of thicken up and congeal it, giving it more of a dense and moistness to it. But oil works just as well. Oil will have a slightly lighter texture to it. But clarified butter, like ghee, will also be dense and thickened up like this. And then I'm just gonna scrape off any of my sides. You could also, my kids don't like nuts in it, but I do, but I just go without because of them. But you could add in walnuts or pecans. Also chocolate chips work nicely in here. And I've also added cocoa powder and chocolate chips if I wanted to do like a chocolate banana bread, and that's kind of been a big hit too. With that, you kind of add like a 1/3 cup of cocoa powder for this recipe, and then a cup or 2 of mini chocolate chips. So I'm gonna spread this around nicely. Put this in here. I'm gonna fill my bowl up with with water, because if you don't, it's gonna be like liquid concrete by the time I actually get to washing it. And now I'm going to add this to the oven. This is our banana bread. I put it in a special little bundt pan, that way it's easier. And my kids can have this to eat over the weekend while I'm gone. This will take closer to an hour to cook, 45 minutes. My muffins will be done in like 15 minutes. So I'm gonna set a timer just so I don't forget about it. For 13 to just give it a good look and see how they're rising and progressing. So my bowl's almost full over here. If you ever are baking and you can't get to your dishes right away, fill them up with water. That prevents them from getting really like dried on and hard to wash later. I like to do my dishes all at the end of the day. And when you have like a family of 9 or 7 to 9, depending on who's here, it can be a lot of dishes. Okay, so I've got that filled up. And now I'm going to work on my pancakes, my sourdough discard pancakes. Okay, so I'm going to start out, I need my discard, which is right over here. This is day 6 of the discard. It has some nice little juicy bubbles on the top. So before I take a cup of it, I'm just gonna give it a nice little stir so that I can have all of that fermented goodness mixed up, just like this. And this recipe is going to use a cup of sourdough discard. So I've got it stirred up, and I've got a cup right here, and I'm gonna fill it up. And this is nice because then it's gonna use just about what I need to discard for my feeding recipe. So these pancakes are a great thing to do, so you're just not wasting all of your discard all the time. And I'll put my cup of sourdough discard. It's got a nice ooze to it, just like that. I'm gonna put it in my bowl. And one thing with discard, if you've never made it before, it has like a soured smell to it, but hence where the name sourdough comes from. It's essentially flour that is fermented, and the active bacteria in it is what gives the rise in sourdough bread. I'm just gonna put it back over here. So I have my cup of sourdough discard in here, and now I'm going to add in 2 eggs. And remember, if you saw earlier, I do not have regular eggs. They are all sold out in the store. So we're gonna be using 6 quail eggs because that was the only eggs available. They didn't even have a liquid egg in the store. That's how we are in the South. When there's a snowstorm, all the milk, eggs, bread, and butter I sold out because I guess everyone's like, I've gotta have my eggs and my butter. And roads were drivable after a day. So I'm gonna crack them in this bowl here just because they're a little bit harder to crack, but about 3 quail eggs equal about 1 large egg. And when I'm baking, I typically use large or extra large eggs. I don't even know if you could buy the small or the medium eggs at the store. I feel like those just get processed into like egg powder or whatnot. But I've got my quail eggs, and I have to say, these eggs are probably the cutest things I've ever seen. I've never actually used them before, but my brother-in-law is an egg farmer, and he said 3 quail eggs will do just about the same as 2 large eggs, or 1 large egg. Let me give my hand a little one. And I'm going to add my 6 quail eggs in here, and that's gonna equal 2 large eggs. So I have them in my bowl. Get all that in, and I'm gonna give this a quick little mix with my discard. And these 2 things are gonna react together as well as with the baking soda and baking powder that I'm gonna add. So I'm gonna whisk them up until all of the eggs are combined into my sourdough starter. And you can see it's starting to get thickened, even more thickened up. These are gonna give your pancakes just a nice flavor to it for a sourdough flavor. Okay, so let me see. I'm gonna get my salt, baking powder, and baking soda, vanilla, and I got some here. Okay, so now I'm going to add in my salt. So I need about a teaspoon of salt. I'm just gonna do it in the bridge of my hand because I kind of know what a teaspoon looks like. So that's just about a teaspoon of salt. I'm gonna pour that in. And now I'm going to use 3 teaspoons of baking powder, but 3 teaspoons is also the same as 1 tablespoon in case you didn't know. So I'm gonna use a tablespoon of baking powder. And for those of you who don't know, baking powder is essentially baking soda mixed with cornstarch. So it has the same reactive unit. Just pour in there. I'm just about out of this. I'll need to get some more. So I have 1 tablespoon of baking powder or 3 teaspoons of baking powder. And now I need half a teaspoon of baking soda. And this is what's gonna react and make my pancakes fluffy along with the eggs. So I've got my half a teaspoon of baking powder. And these are ingredients, baking powder, baking soda are ingredients and eggs that you have to be exact on when baking because they have a chemical reaction when you cook. Perfect. So I'm gonna give these a quick blend, real quick, so that they get dispersed throughout my wet ingredients. Perfect. This way you don't have to sift your flour together with it. I always think that step's a pain. So I have these mixed together. Now I'm going to add in 1 teaspoon of vanilla. This is gonna give it a nice flavor. So a teaspoon of vanilla, and the alcohol in the vanilla will actually react with the eggs. And I'm gonna pour in, this is a half a stick or 4 tablespoons of melted butter. You could use ghee or you could use oil if you wanted to, but I feel like the butter adds a nice texture and richness. And then I'm gonna add in a cup of milk. Just like this. And these are all my wet ingredients to start with. Mix it up nicely. You want to get it all thoroughly mixed up. That way when you add in your flour and your sugar, it will blend nicely. The key when you're baking is always mix your white ingredients together and then your dry ingredients. That way you don't have to deal with as many clumps, and it's much harder to mix if you try to do it at different times. So this recipe calls for a little bit of sugar and some flour. So I'm gonna start off with a 1/4 cup of flour, or of sugar, not flour. This is just gonna add a hint of sweetness. Most of the sweetness will come later when you add your syrup on it or fruit compote. So I'm gonna add 1/4 of a cup of granulated sugar. And then I'm gonna add 1½ cups, let me get this all on here, 1½ cups of flour. And I'm using just unbleached all-purpose flour here. You're gonna wanna use all-purpose flour and not bread flour. Bread flour has more gluten in it, which would make your pancakes more doughy and not as fluffy and light. So I have 1½ cups of flour. And now I'm going to give this a good mix with my hand mixer until all of it's incorporated. And I like to turn my bowl on the side to get any of the flour or ingredients that have stuck to the side. That's one thing that's nice about using a hand mixer over a stand mixer for this, is I can get some of those little stragglers. Perfect. And you see, it's made a nice kind of sticky batter, which will be perfect for our pancakes. So now that we have our batter done, put this in my bowl. I'm gonna use my spatula, just scrape around, just make sure we have all of those dry ingredients that are mixed up. Perfect. That's the way I want to see it. And now we're ready to heat up our griddle. So this is, I have a griddle right here. This is a hex-clad skillet pan or griddle pan. It's non-stick. If you don't have a non-stick pan, invest in a good one because they make all the difference. This is supposed to be scratch resistant. I've had it for over a year and I've not gotten a scratch on it. I actually put this in my TikTok shop if you guys are interested in. It's on like a super sale, which was cheaper than what I bought it from Hexclad a year ago. But this one has been great. I use it for making grilled cheeses and my pancakes. But it's nice because it's a griddle pan, so you can really get your spatula under when you're flipping. But you could also just use a regular fry pan, or if you have the big long sheet griddles, those work as well. So I have this heating up. And I'm gonna get a little bit of butter to just put on top of my pan. And I'm just gonna kind of rub it just a little bit like this, not much, because there's already some good butter in my batter. And I'm gonna get a little scoop measuring cup. You could use a spoon, but I found that this makes nice, even pancakes. And I typically make my pancakes a little bit smaller so that they're easier to flip. And if you're starting out and you've never made pancakes before, go smaller until you've mastered the flip. and then it will be easier. Especially like when I make Swedish pancakes, I do smaller because those are much thinner and different ones. I have a video of those on my page if you want to see how I make my Swedish pancakes. So I have my griddle warming up. I'm gonna start with it higher, and then I'll turn it down as I go because I just want my pan to warm up. And then I'll turn it down. Make sure you turn it down or you will burn your pancakes because they cook fast when it's on high. So I have it on high. Now I'm starting to see my melted butter bubble, which is what I want to see. So I'm gonna just turn it down a little bit, and I'm gonna add about a nice scoop here. So this is 1/4 cup. And because you can see the sourdough starters in it, my batter is definitely a bit more gelatinous than a typical pancake batter. But that's what makes these really unique and different and have such a nice flavor profile. It's just that sourdough. It has that really delicious sourdough taste in it. Perfect. And now, while these are cooking and starting to bubble, let's go check on our banana muffins because those should be just about done soon. We can look at them while they're baking. And I'll pop it open and I'll give it a little tap test to see if they're ready. When you are baking, you want to minimize the number of times you open up your oven because if you open it up all the time, it loses about 10 degrees every time you open. So you can see they're puffed up nice. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go give it a tap. If it's like really wobbly, it's not ready. If it's firm, it's ready. So if it's like the doughboy, it needs to bake some more. So you can see they're still pretty soft. They're not as firm. They're firm on the edges. So these probably need about 2 to 3 more minutes. So I'm gonna put up here, and then I'm just gonna set my timer for about 3 minutes to come and check on these guys. You wanna make sure not to overcook your muffins or they'll be really dry, just like cake. And now we can come check out our pancakes over here that are bubbling up nicely. You can zoom in on this in just a second. You can see they're starting to bubble, which is nice. You'll know when they're ready to flip is when you see bubbles all over it. That's the heat interacting with the ingredients and the air escaping out of the batter. So we don't want to flip until they are ready. Also, this batter you can make the day before and you can let it sit overnight, which the sourdough will ferment some.
You got a comment about someone saying they love the baking pans.
So the baking pan. So the bundt cake pan I think is from Nordic Ware, and it has like little slotted edges on it. And I find it's great because those are like, each slot is like a perfect slice of banana bread, and which is why I do it in my bundt pan instead of a loaf pan. And you don't get like the really dry, crusty edges. It's moist all the way around. And then my other one is, I believe, a Williams & Sonoma Gold Touch. I think I have their baking kit. Target also has a similar one to the Gold Touch, but I found that the Williams & Sonoma one, it is more pricey, but it does last longer. Oh, I think my griddle is too high, so these might be a little darker than the way I like them. But I'm gonna give them a quick flip. That one, that's not too bad. I'm gonna turn my griddle down a little bit lower, and then I'm gonna move, this is my hotter side of my cook stove, and cook it there. I prefer this shade. Now this isn't burnt, but this will probably be enjoyed more by me. My kids will be like, oh, it's burnt. It's not burnt, it's just a little darker. So I have these cooking here. There you can see they're getting a nice fluff up on them. I'm gonna get a pan ready, or a plate ready, so that I can start scooping them out on here. And you can serve these with either like maple syrup, or you can make yourself like a fruit compote, or like a brown butter syrup, which is like I melt some butter and then I add brown sugar and cinnamon, and that's also a really nice drizzle on it. The second one side is gonna cook much faster than the first, and now my skillet is up and heated nicely, which I like. I'm gonna flip this one over because I want that edge to cook a little bit more. Perfect, and then I'm gonna cook that one just a little bit more. My first ones are always my most variable until I have my skillet at just the right heat. And And so you just gotta make sure, you gotta watch from the beginning. I like my skillet up high just to get it hot, but then I gotta turn it down, and I cook them around like a 3 or a 4 on my skillet, which is like a medium low. Perfect. And perfect. So now I'm gonna give a nice little put around of the butter just like this, and do a scoop.
And for those just joining you, just want to go over that this is the sourdough.
Yes, so this is sourdough discard pancakes. So I used about a cup of my sourdough discard, which is about half of it. And then I mixed it with 1.5 cups of flour. I'm going to check on my muffins, so you'll have to walk with me. A 1/4 cup of sugar, a teaspoon of salt, and a tablespoon of baking powder, and half a teaspoon of baking soda, a teaspoon of vanilla. Let's check on these. Oh, look, you can see they've got a nice golden. They're still just about, oh, that one's about done. My oven tends to cook the back a little faster, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to give this a quick flip. You can see these are perfect, and I'm going to cook for about a minute longer. So I'll pop back here in just a second. But then my recipe, it also uses, and then I said a cup of discard, 2 eggs, and a cup of milk, and a 1/2 cup of butter. And you whisk it all together, and they make delicious sourdough pancakes. So they have a nice sourdough tartness to them, which pairs really well with butter and syrup. I'm gonna pop under. Looks like these are nice. I think I need to turn it down just a little. Let's look at this. This is actually a fish spatula, but I love it because you see how thin it is? It like goes right under my pancakes really nicely, and they'll help it turn and flip easily. So I'm gonna cook this side, they kind of there. And I'm looking, they're starting to bubble, which is telling me that they're really close to flipping. You do not want to flip prematurely, which is why I like to take a little peek. I peek at it and see if it has the nice browning on the bottom, and then I'll flip it. If they're still white or barely golden, cook it a little bit longer, because trying to flip an unready pancake will just turn into a pancake mess. So let's see. This one looks like it's perfect. Look at this. We've got a nice golden color around on it. That one still needs a little. And this one looks like it's perfect. Just like that. Easy peasy lemon squeezy. This batter is also much easier to flip than a traditional pancake batter, because the sourdough, it's so much more thick and gelatinous. It's just a little bit slimier, that's why I say gelatinous, than a regular one, but that's because that's the sourdough starter in it, the fermented flour. Let's put that, turn it a little. And also, I'm gonna say this again, the non-stick or a griddle. That's key. If you don't have a griddle or a non-stick pan, pancakes can stick to them and burn. I love this one, it's the Hex-Clad one. I've also used a Cuisinart in the past, and I have a Scandi pan, which I like as well. But this is my favorite for cooking. I used to also have a big griddle, but my stove doesn't actually fit a big griddle. It doesn't cook well, so it doesn't really work. Okay, let's go check on those muffins, because they are going to be done. So I'm gonna open it up. My bundt cake is going to be cooking for a little bit longer, because it's gonna take about an hour to cook. But these muffins take, I think these took about 18 minutes. But you see they've got a nice firm top to them and a beautiful golden color. So I'm gonna put these right here, and I think my pancakes will be ready to take off and for the next one. So perfect. So look at this. They've got a nice golden texture to it. They're really thick, which is what I like. So a really thick and golden pancake. This one, you can still tell it's a little bit goopy in the middle, so I'm gonna let it sit and cook. But they've got nice, and this is the colors. So you see my first one, my griddle was just a little too hot, so I turned it down. These are what I'm aiming for, a nice golden brown. And then for those of you joining, these are banana muffins we made. Just a basic recipe. I made a big batch of it. So today I used 9 bananas, which is equal to about 8 large ones. And then like 4.5 cups of flour, a cup of brown sugar, a cup of white sugar, a cup of melted butter, and a tablespoon of baking powder, and a tablespoon of baking soda, and 4 eggs, and 2 teaspoons of salt. Simple, easy, but everyone tends to love them. So got mine there. I'm gonna take my butter, just give it a quick little put on there. The butter, it's not so much for the stick, but adds a nice golden color and flavor to my pancakes. So I'm gonna this is about 1/4 cup of batter at a time. I'm gonna pop that on here. And there, it's nice and thick, which makes it really easy. You don't have to worry about the dough like running everywhere. And here I'm gonna show you guys one of my muffins. I like to eat them when they're nice and warm, so I'm gonna peel off. You see how they've got a nice golden color all the way around. You can see the steam coming off of it. We can break it in half so you guys can see the middle of it, how moist they are. And they're perfect. And then I just love to put a little bit of butter on my muffin when I eat them. Especially it's banana bread, same with banana bread. And sometimes I'll sprinkle cinnamon sugar on it. I'll give it a taste. Delicious. I like using a mixture of brown sugar and regular sugar in it because it gives you just a richer sweetness. It's not an overly sweet muffin at all, but it just has a nice like sugary, I guess it's a caramely undertone to it. Excellent. I have a feeling that these will be gone by tomorrow in our house. Okay, let's look at our pancakes right here. You can start to see they're starting to bubble up some right here, but they're not quite ready. I can see, I'll show you how I know they're not ready. Even though you have a bubble, look, it's still white underneath. That's a big no-no for flipping, so don't flip. If you try to flip it now, your pancakes are just gonna go bleh everywhere. So I might turn up a little bit. So I'm getting a nice bubble. They're starting to puff up. For those of you who are just joining, these are sourdough discard pancakes. So I'm on about day 6 of my sourdough discard. So I used a cup of that into this mix. And then I added, 1.5 cups of flour, 1/4 cup of sugar, a teaspoon of salt, 2 eggs, 1/2 cup of melted butter, a cup of milk, 1/2 teaspoon of baking soda, a tablespoon of baking powder, and a teaspoon of salt, and a teaspoon of vanilla. Easy, you can whisk it up. It makes a lot of pancakes, so if you're a smaller family and you won't necessarily eat all of these, this batter can be refrigerated and you can use it the next day. The sourdough in it will actually help ferment it some longer, and so it's a great to use the next day as well. Okay, I'm gonna give this guy a little flip. He's got a nice golden color to it. Let me check this one. I think he's getting close. I turn my pan over here and give him a nice flip. And the nice thing about this pan, or if you're using a griddle, I don't have to try to angle under it. It's got a really low ridge, which is perfect for grilled cheese or pancakes or crepes or anything that you need to get your spatula under like this. Let's see, I think this guy might be just about ready to flip. Perfect. Turn him up here. And let's see, I've made 6, 9. I'll probably be able to make 12, maybe 13 pancakes out of this, maybe 14. But these are not small pancakes. Look at the thickness and the depth of these, and they actually have like kind of a good weight to them because they are like sourdough to it. They have a richer, more denseness.
You want to let her out real quick?
Yes, our Pepper is letting us She's whining at the door. She's saying, let me out, let me out. Here we go. And we have, I think, charcoal coming in. Our cats, we have 3 cats and 2 dogs. So it's kind of crazy here, along with 5 kids. Let's see. Oh, look at these. Perfect, nice golden light. I want to cook that one a little bit more. But while that's cooking, I can add one over here. Just gonna take my butter. And I'm using soft butter right now. It just melts a little nicer on here. I'll put that while it cooks. But you can see how it's got a nice stickiness to it. So these are great pancakes if you are just starting out and learning how to flip, because it's really hard to mess up a flip on these pancakes. That sourdough starter makes the dough a really nice texture. Look at that nice golden color. We've got quite a stack over here. Perfect. Another, again, nice golden with a big poof in the middle. And then I'm going to put a little bit more butter, and these should be my last sets of pancakes. And you can see I've got quite like the Paul Bunyan stack over here. So I'm going to give it another big scoop. And I'm sure, I've never done it, but I bet you could make the little silver dollar size pancakes on these. It would work just as well. And I'm sure you could make a giant big pancake, but I always find those are just difficult to flip. There we go. So I made about 12 or so pancakes. I'm gonna let that fill up. And we can get a separate little plate over here while these are cooking. And when I serve up my pancakes, I do too. I like to add just a little bit of butter on it, not much. Just use my spatula over here. Kind of just put it on there. You want softened butter because it's going to melt nicely, just like that. So you have your butter. And then I know this is probably not a popular opinion, but we don't use real maple syrup in this house. None of my, I like it, but none of my kids like real maple syrup. They love this stuff. So I never have real on there, but a nice little drizzle like this. I'll get a fork. Right. You can see, I'll cut into it and you can see how nice and fluffy they are. Look at that nice fluffiness. And that's the sourdough reacting with the eggs and the baking soda and the baking powder. They're sourdough, but they have it's a very mellow sourdough. So it's not very potent. It's not going to be like those really sour bread. It's just a nice mellowness of the sour, a little tartness, which really blends well with the syrup and the butter. Let me look at these guys. I think they're, perfect and ready to flip. But if you guys enjoyed our live today, I have lots of videos on my page. Please like and subscribe. Send recipe suggestions for us. I'd be happy to make them. But thanks for joining us today.